lmao, princess.
Guess who's sick and just spent like 5 hours making 3 transitions. You have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is just, it's a basic transition. It looks like this. You know, it moves the screen up, right? Motion blur, shockwave, and then it goes up to this, right? Now, the way that we do this is actually pretty simple. All that we do is we take the offset and we move it up. I like to move it up 150 blocks with an exponential in. So we move it up 150 blocks, we snap it instantly down 150 blocks. And then after that, we just slowly exponential out back to 0. If I get rid of everything else, I can show you what that looks like. Just simple ass transition, nothing too special. So then other things like the effects and stuff, I actually added a little bit of zoom to it. If we take those off spawn trigger, I just took the zoom and I zoomed it in by like 2 times on an exponential in, ending like right here, and then exponential out back to 1, and that makes it pretty that adds a little bit more movement. You notice there, it's pretty subtle, but it adds a lot more movement. Then we have the motion blur. That's basic, right? I actually have a preset for motion blur right here. It just does the exact same thing. You could take it in, turn off, use Y, and turn on, use X to have the motion blur go into a different direction, right? And I just use that for situations like this. In this case, we are moving the screen up, so we would use Y right there. I have it set to the max, but you don't really want to go over that because after that it starts looking like the blocks are duplicating. So like if I put it at 5, yeah, it looks like the blocks are duplicating and the effect doesn't really solidify. It looks really weird. So after that, it's just nice little shock line. This is pretty complicated, at least in my opinion. It was pretty hard for me to figure out how to get this to look the way it did. So if I just take it off spawn trigger, nice little impact, makes everything wavy. I can try to explain it, but I guarantee I'm going to fail in some way, shape, or form. So we have the speed, that's just how fast it goes. We want that pretty fast. It goes max to 1, but we're going to put it at 5 just to get more speed. And then the strength, we want to put that at 1, not too much because we don't want it to override all the other effects. Wave width, that's obvious. It's the wave. It's the width of the wave. Fade in and fade out. I think this is the fade in and the fade out of the actual trigger rather than the fade in and fade out of the wave itself, but I'm not too sure. I just know that if I put this fade in all the way down, it starts immediately, and if I put this all the way down, it ends immediately. The thickness, that's basically just how many of each wave you want. So if like let's say you want it to pulse like 5 times or 5 waves, then you have the thickness of 5. Dual, that just makes it to where 2 of them happen at the same time. So like if you look here, right, and then you turn dual on, right, it starts from the middle and emanates from that. That's pretty much it. You don't really have to have dual on, honestly. It might look better without, so I might turn that on. But that's pretty much it. That's the entire effect. Another thing is after you use the offset, you want to make sure that you use exit static and exit instant, and then use static to whatever you want to put it at right after, directly after. If you look at the effect lines in these, they're actually like slightly offset. The one that actually statics to what you want it to is at the end, and the one that's exits both statics is right before. And the thing it's clinging to is actually this object right here, group 3, and that just centers it right here to the ball part. Pretty simple, pretty simple. Move on to the next tier. So tier 2 is basically just the same thing, but adding a little bit more movement and pizzazz, right? I'm going to go ahead and give you a little preview of what it looks like. Right, so it's pretty simple in like explaining what it does. It just statics the camera to this object right here, which is in the center. You'll notice it statics the camera to this object. It has a sign out, so it kind of adds like an impact sort of movement. If we have this on an exponential out, you'll be able to tell much more easily. but I have it on a sign out because it's much more smooth, and that's what this song kind of desires. It's a much more mellow, kind of lo-fi song. Basically, we just want to have a little bit of impact when we static to something specific. So I put this on a very specific beat. I put it on the same beat that we hit the green orb. And a snare actually happens there, so it's a pretty important impact. Other than that, we have another zoom, and this zoom also has an impact. It's on an exponential out, and it has a time of 2, and it zooms to 1.5. And that just happens on the same exact impact. Alright, so next we have an offset, just a basic offset, just like last time. This actually moves the camera down 150 instead of up this time. Snap, oh, whoops. Yeah, I'm stupid. Snap up 150 after we move down 150, and then just ease it out with an exponential out. Right, we actually have a rotate trigger here that rotates it negative 90 degrees. Now, weird thing about rotate triggers is I feel like they are rotating the opposite way. Because if you have a regular rotate trigger and you put negative 90, it's going to rotate like backwards. Like from the top, it goes backwards. That makes sense. But with this rotate trigger, if you put negative 90, it'll rotate forward. Which I guess then that means that it's going from the bottom, but I don't know why all rotations should like I feel like all rotations should be held from the same point of a circle. You know what I mean? Which is kind of weird. Inverted. It actually rotates like this, negative 90 degrees. It's on an exponential in-out, and it has a 2-second timer. And when you use exponential in-out, or any in-out for transitions, you want to first put the move time at 1, and you want to make sure that it's lined up with whatever transition you're doing. So like that's where the impact happens. That's where it all happens. So you want to put it on half the time that you actually want it at, and then you line it up, then you put it at double the time. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that the exponential in-out, when it's moving the fastest, it's going to be happening on the transition. Other than that, we just have motion blur again. In this case, we are actually moving on the X position. You'd think we'd be moving on the Y position because the offset is moving down 150, but we're actually on the X position because we've rotated the camera. And because we rotated the camera, the ball section is now going to be rotated 90 degrees, which is kind of gimmicky. Other than that, there's some pulses. The pulses are pretty basic. They portray to the song. I have a nice little gradient up here that just uses the background color with negative 36 hue, and the brightness is turned down a little bit. The other color for it is just black. Because it's additive, it just disappears. And that looks pretty cool. I like gradients that only shift the hue a little bit. But yeah, basically all I did for the pulses here is I made it to where right before you get to the pulse, a blending screen fades in on a 0.3 second. So it adds a little bit of intensity to the rise. Right? And then we cut it all off with another gradient trigger that is on multiply, and one is set to white and the other one is set to black. And the reason why I did a dark pulse here is because the song actually calms down a little bit, and if we did a pure white pulse, it would feel weird. Not look weird, but it would feel weird, because white pulses and really high brightness pulses are supposed to be used for more intense sections. It can work in low intensity sections, but in this case it would feel kind of weird, at least I think. So I just pulsed it to black. Other than that, there's some zoom stuff going on. We got ease in, ease out, and that happens slowly as you come out of the ball. There's 2 shake triggers, right? So there's one for the first kick. See how there's 2 kicks there? Or here, rather. There's 2 kicks. I have the first shake on that, and I have the second shake a little bit after the transition, because after the movement, you're actually like in the middle of moving to the ball, and once you actually get to the ball, you won't even be able to see the shake. So I added the shake a little bit after, just so you could still get a glimpse of it. Other than that, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. There is a shock line here, which just is the exact same thing as the last one. And that happens on the snare, so more impact for these 2. That's pretty much it. That's this transition. Alright, transition 3. This one's gonna be a complicated one. Here, I'll just let you look. Alright, so there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, we have the gradient from last time. Instead of having that be on the top of the screen, I have it on the right side of the screen, because if you look closely, you can see particles over in that little black section. And those particles are coming from the side of the screen. And it would be kind of weird if we had them coming from the top of the screen, because I knew when I was thinking of what to do for this transition that I wanted 2 blocks moving to the center of the screen. And if I had the particles on top, then it would kind of look weird. So if we want to have a line in the middle of the screen, then usually we'd want these to be moving to the left. I'm not sure if the way I explained it just then actually made sense. I'm probably talking absolute gobsmack right now, but yeah, I made the gradient on the right side of the screen and I added particles to the right side of the screen. That's just atmospheric stuff. Other than that, we didn't have any impact on the snare. I probably should have done that for like song representation. But all we really just have here is another offset transition. This one moves actually to the right, so that means that we have to have motion blur on the X position. We also have a radial blur for more motion blur, and that actually continues to the next part. I'll get to that in a second, don't worry. More zoom, we have exponential in, and this one ends on the impact. Zooms to 10, and then we have a snap to 0.2 instantly. And this zoom just makes it slowly go to 5. Now this is basically just the exact same thing as the offsets, but with zoom. We zoom in really far, and then we snap it out, and then we zoom back in. There's other examples of that transition, unlike this case, because in this case we are actually zooming in and then stopping immediately, and then zooming in slowly rather than that immediate zoom out. If I were to do that, it would probably look something like this. Like, let's put this at 1 second just temporarily, and I put that at exponential out. Pretty much what it would look like. I would use exponential in if I was lazy in this case, if I would like, because what I really want to do is I want to make it to where once we actually transition to the white screen, it's moving the fastest. But I just used ease in because I want it to move slowly over time. With exponential ins, you only really get to see movement for like half the trigger. So I wanted to use ease in with 4.0 just to get a little bit more movement out of there. I think it's time to move on to these little guitar strings here. This is more songers, oh my god, that stutter. This is more songers, bruh. Basically, I listened to the part and I wanted to hear what instrument was mainly prominent. And it's literally just a guitar. So the only thing I could do for this is I could just make a guitar, right? And also I want to accentuate something really quickly. You don't always have to have an instant transition. You know what I mean? You could have something like this in the middle of the transition. It doesn't matter if it's 0.2 seconds, if the song is really fast. It doesn't matter if the transition only lasts for a millisecond. If you just have something quick in between transitions, it will really make the transition just independent and unique, I think. I learned that from a level called Oxy. I think the person who made it is called Psychro. I studied that a while ago. I'll probably link it in the description or show a clip of it somewhere in this video. But that level was a really good learner and a really good study for me to actually learn how to do these transitions. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Guitar strings. How did I make these? I just used gradients, and I made it to where they move 0.5 in, right? And that makes it disappear. And then at different rates, each one moves out. So like, let's say this one moves faster. It's now going to have a slight curve to it, right? And then we move this one, right? And it scales up. But if you have them move at different rates, that's what these triggers are over here. Oh my god, this is a lot of triggers. Let me turn off shaders just so you can see a little bit better. Each of these have different move times, right? And we're taking them and we make sure that the top ones are moving up 5 and the bottom ones are moving -5. And then we just have them at different times. So this one is at 1 second. This one is at 1.4 seconds. This one is probably at, yeah, it's 1.10, and then this one's 1.2. Because they're moving at different times, it kind of makes it look like a curve. Originally, when I was doing this transition, I was going to use this lasso tool, and I was going to make like curves and stuff, and I was going to have those move across the screen really fast. They're going to be really long. But instead, because like it looked like shit, you know what I mean? So instead I did this, I don't know if anybody else has done this, but I just came up with this on the fly. It's pretty cool. I might use this in other levels because it's a really cool transition and a really cool idea for guitar strings. But anyway, yeah, that's how I made it look like it's guitar strings scaling up and down. Other than that, we have a UI over here with 2 blocks moving into the center of the screen. I mentioned it earlier, but never exactly explained how. It's just a UI. So UI target is 20, and then group ID is 21. Make sure they're both centered. These both have 21, and they both each get their respective groups. This one moves up, this one moves down, slide the screen, yada yada yada, right? Pretty simple. I also have some text here that says relax. I wanted to add some like lore related text, but I was too lazy to search up the lore of the song. It's just on a light background blending, and then it slowly moves left. And I did that because I wanted to have something in the center of the screen as the screen transition was coming in. So I had this little text. It kind of adds a little bit of personality to the transition. You know, if this wasn't here, then, I mean, how else would you know to relax? It's pretty important. The continuity of this transition is really important. I knew I wanted guitar strings, and I knew I wanted 2 blocks to move on the top and bottom of the screen to make it thinner. And basically what that would do is that would make a really thin line in the middle of the screen. So once you have a thin line in the middle of the screen, on the impact, all you have to do is make 1 guitar string in the middle of the screen, and it would seamlessly transition. Just like that. After the guitar strings, I knew I wanted to have something make the screen bigger. I wanted the screen to be all white. So we have an object right here, really thin, and it doesn't appear until like the last second. And then we have that scale up slowly, and then it covers up the whole screen. And that'll make it look like the string in the middle is actually getting bigger, and that's what makes the screen white. And then after that, I just turned on a blending screen with a gradient. So it's on color 4, additive, max, and then I take color 4 and I turn that down, and it makes it really cool. Normally, like, some people might do this with a normal, or just add a block over, and then they'll make that white, but turn the opacity down. But you can see how different that looks, right? Rather than making it black, turning the opacity up, and then making this additive. Because if we turn it black, then it just goes invisible. You can see how that changes the effect that it gives on the screen. So that's pretty much it for that transition. Offset movements, we have a guitar string, made sure we centered everything on the absolute center of the screen, and then we made sure that they transition smoothly when we actually got to the black transition. Oh yeah, also I added the particles only when we got to the black part. Then just to transition out of that, we had a block scale all the way up, and it made the entire screen white. That was pretty much it. Alright, do with this information what you will. I'm out.